Okay, today you have Q&A on your 120 Q&A number one. Your only proper name is Phil. This is your 120 Q&A number one for 5 minutes. Ready? When you testified, you spoke to the front desk. Did you do that by telephone or did you go down there?
Telephone. I wasn't going to get that far away.
How did they respond to you?
She said she would consult with the manager and he should be coming right down.
What happened after that then?
Well, in the meantime, we managed to get him up.
You made the telephone call from your motel?
Right. With him kind of assisting me now because he could help out a little bit to get up. Subsequently, he was up before Phil arrived.
You said we. We managed to get him up. Who are you referring to?
Myself and my husband.
You and your husband?
Yes. Following my telephone conversation, I went back in, and then he was able then to start kind of helping me get himself up. So with the wall and the pushing and everything, we got up before my son-in-law came because he came right after he had gotten up. I said, "It's okay now, he's up." Then my son came in. I believe my son might have come in about the time that the manager came. I'm not sure. That I can't remember.
Tell me everything that happened before the manager came.
That's what happened.
Did your husband tell you what had happened?
Yes, when he finally got up, when I could get him up, I said, "What in the world happened?" And he said, "My feet just came right out from under me." I said, "Well, how come?" "Because we've never experienced this before." And I looked in the bathtub, and at that time it appeared kind of light and everything. He said because it was slippery. So I examined in there to see why he said it was slippery.
What did you discover?
I observed missing tapes that should have been there, and it was just smoothed over. What tapes were present didn't provide that much traction.
Where were the tapes that you observed?
In the bathtub,
Yes, I mean what area of the tub?
on the floor of the tub.
Front, back, middle? The front would be the area closest to the faucets.
They were arranged in parallel strips.
Strips running the length of the bathtub?
No, the width of the tub, if I'm remembering correctly. Right in certain areas, it didn't seem like there were any, and then the other areas were kind of smooth. See, I've had total knee surgery, so I elected not to shower that day. I can't afford to have a fall.
You elected not to shower before or after your husband's fall?
I did not shower that day at all until that evening.
Had he not had his accident, would you have showered?
Yes,
The reason you elected not to shower was because of the missing strips or tapes?
yes,
Could you see where the strips had been? Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you can observe the outline.
yes, it's discolored. It's discolored, definitely.
Are you able to estimate for me in a rough percentage or a precise percentage, if you know, what percentage of strips were there as compared to what was supposed to have been there?
No, I cannot, but I showed the manager, and I requested him to examine it, and I informed him how unhappy I was and that when you rent from an establishment like that, you expect protection.
Returning to how much of the strips were there and how much were gone, can you venture half?
I can't.
I, your 120, number 2, you have Airline Highway, U.S. Postal Service, Clearview, Walgreens, and Green Drive. This is 120 Q&A number 2 for 5 minutes. Ready? You do remember where the airline highway ramp is to get to the interstate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go over the high rise.
That's correct.
How far is the U.S. Postal Service facility from that point?
Maybe about 3 blocks.
Now, as I see it, though, rather than getting an interstate going to your mother's house, you went the other direction out toward Clearview to go to the Walgreens.
Right.
And the reason you went out there was why?
To use the money machine and make purchases.
How late does that Walgreens stay open?
24 hours.
What time did you arrive at your mother's house that night?
Maybe around 11 o'clock.
Did you see your mom when you got there?
Correct, I did.
She was still up when you got home?
No, she was in the bed.
Was she sleeping or awake?
I can't tell if it's sleeping. She saw me. Evidently, she wasn't sleeping.
That was about 11 o'clock?
Correct.
What did you do after you arrived home, after you arrived at your mother's place?
I lay down and went to sleep.
What time did you get up the next day?
It was early. It was before 8 o'clock, something like that.
When did you first learn about the fire at your residence?
Maybe about 10, 11 o'clock the next day.
That would have been 10 to 11 o'clock on Friday morning.
Correct.
How did you find out about it?
I went over there.
You went over to the house?
Yes.
Did anything go or anybody go with you when you went?
No, I went alone.
Why were you going over to the house?
To take back possession. I had the necessary paperwork at that certain time.
And did you obtain that paperwork?
I went to the lawyer's office and picked it up.
When did you go and pick that up?
Friday morning.
Did someone go with you when you returned to your residence?
No.
What did you discover when you arrived back there, when you arrived at your residence?
I discovered a mess, a burned mess.
Was the fire department there at the time you got back?
No.
Was anybody there at all?
No.
When was the first time that you talked with anybody at all about the occurrence of the fire at your home?
That Friday.
Okay. Who was the first person that you talked to about it?
I talked to the fire department.
Did you call them or did they call you?
I called them.
How long after the fire? How much time passed before you called the fire department?
Maybe about an hour.
What did you do after you learned of the fire, but before you telephoned the fire department?
What did I do?
Correct, sir.
What do you mean? I'm not understanding.
Let me see if I can clarify. You got to the house around 11 o'clock. You saw it was burned, correct?
Probably about 11 o'clock.
10 to 11?
I would think, but I think it was before 11. I know it was before 11.
You go to the place. You see, it's burned up.
Right.
At some point in time after you make that observation, you call the fire department.
Right.
What I'm trying to find out is what you did in the time period between when you got to your house on Green Drive, saw that it was burned, and you called the fire department. What did you do in the period between those two things?
I drove to my mother's house to use the phone.
Any reason why you Okay, on your 100, number 1, you have James Bennett, Jim, Mona Lisa, Dottie Demis, James, and Jims. This is 100 Q&A number 1 for 5 minutes. Ready? So it was 6 months after you applied for a marriage license that you married James Bennett,
Yes.
and you cannot recall what the county clerk's words were when she implied she would check on your divorce status?
No, I can't. It was from February to September. It wasn't like I jumped right from one to the other.
All right. Then, according to your testimony, your first discovery that you were not divorced was in February of 1991.
That's right. It was about 6 months after Jim and I got married.
At the time that you married James Bennett, you were good friends with his mother. Is that right?
That's right.
And her name for the record?
Mona Lisa.
What did you tell her, if anything, at the time you were getting ready to marry James Bennett?
I did not tell her anything.
Let me ask you this. Did you have any conversations with her about your prior divorce?
Well, I don't remember. I'm sure she knew I was divorced.
Do you remember whether or not you told her at that time that you were applying to marry James Bennett that you had your divorce decree?
I had no reason to because I waived all my rights to any of those papers, you know?
So you are saying that you never made any statement to her about having a document saying you were divorced?
I didn't say I did or I didn't say I didn't. She knew Dottie was going to court for me.
So you never made a statement that you had a decree?
No, I never made a statement that I had an actual paper or a decree because I did not have one.
All right.
In fact, I called Dottie, who went for my final date.
And what did Dottie say?
She told me that my date would be final on February 12th.
Do you have a phone number or address for Daddy Demis?
I don't have one with me. I can get it.
Would you phone me and give me her address and phone number?
Sure, if I can find it.
Outside of yourself and James Bennett, how many other people in February of 90 knew that you and James were not validly married?
Just his mom and dad.
Anyone else?
My mom and dad.
Any other family members?
His sister and her husband probably knew about it.
As far as Jim's mother and father, how did you tell them that you and Jim did not have a valid marriage?
I never once said to them that we didn't have a valid marriage. I knew that I was legally divorced.
You said nothing to his folks?
All I said to them, or else Jim told them, was that the attorney called. I still wasn't worried.
Okay. As far as your mother and father, you said they knew there was some problem?
I told Mom the same thing, that I did not know why this lawyer was calling.
Okay, you're 100 number 2. You have Linda Carroll, Steve Carroll, Officer Adams, Rowan Duke, and Officer Rowan. This is 100 Q&A number 2 for 5 minutes. Ready? Would you state your name for the court and jury, please?
Linda Carroll.
How do you spell your last name?
Karol.
Are you related to the defendant in this matter?
Yes, I am. I am his sister.
Are you also his legal guardian?
Yes, I am.
How did you become his legal guardian?
He was in trouble a lot with our mom because she has to work 2 jobs. And the last time he was in court, I asked the judge if I could have him.
How long ago was that?
That was 2 years ago.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
What is your husband's name?
Steve Carroll.
Is Steve also his guardian?
No, just I am. We went through the whole thing, and he is staying with me, just like I was his parent.
Where is your father at this time?
He left a long time ago. None of us have seen him for years and years.
Okay. Referring to this case, when was the first time you were contacted by the police?
It was on September 29.
What time of day did they contact you?
They came banging on my door pretty late. It was around 1 o'clock. I was in bed.
What did they say when they woke you?
They wanted to know about a little girl. They wanted to see if I had a little girl at my house.
Did the police ask you to go with them?
No, I told them to come in and look around, and they did. Then they left my house.
Did you go down to the station the next morning?
Yes, I did.
Why did you do that? Were you called by the police?
Yes, they said they had my brother in for something pretty serious, and they needed to question him. They were going to talk to him, and they said we could go down.
Did anyone else go down with you?
My husband and my uncle went down with me.
Did you have any kind of discussion before the interview took place?
Yes, Officer Adams took us downstairs and said he was going to tell us what happened so I wouldn't break down during the interview.
What did he tell you?
He told us the little girl was found and that she was dead, and that my brother had something to do with it, or the police thought he had some information about it, I guess.
Anything else during that conversation?
He said he wanted me to talk to the other lady officer. I think her name is Rowan.
Did you do that?
Yes, we went into another room. There was another man in there with us, and she talked to him and told him I had a level head and I should go ahead and let Duke talk.
Let Duke talk to who?
Officer Rowan, and I told her I didn't know what to do because I had not